Two men. The first, you know him. He texts back within seconds. He is always available, always warm, always eager to see her, always ready to rearrange his schedule, always there. He does everything right by the conventional measure. He is present, consistent, devoted. She does not think about him much. The second man is different. He responds when he responds. He is interested genuinely, but he does not orbit her. He has a direction, a life that was in motion before she arrived and will continue whether she stays or not. Conversations with him feel like opening a door into a room you did not expect. You leave having seen something, but certain there are more rooms you have not seen. She thinks about him constantly. What? This is not a question about manipulation. It is not a question about games or tactics or making yourself artificially scarce. It is a far more interesting question than that. It is a question about how the human mind actually works, what it clings to, what it dismisses, what it cannot stop returning to, and why presence has almost nothing to do with proximity. Niccolò Machiavelli wrote, "Men judge by the eye rather than by the hand, for everyone can see but few can feel." He was writing about princes. He was also writing about this. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly what kind of signal you are leaving in the minds of the people around you and precisely what to do about it. In 1927, a Soviet psychologist named Bluma Zygarnik sat in a Viennese cafe and noticed something strange. The waiters remembered every open order with perfect clarity. Table 7 needs the wine. Table 3 is still waiting on the soup. But the moment an order was completed, delivered, paid for, it vanished from their memory entirely. Closed, filed, gone. She took this observation into the laboratory. What she found became one of the most replicated findings in cognitive psychology. The unfinished holds us. The incomplete loop demands return. The brain, it turns out, does not treat resolved and unresolved experiences equally. It keeps the open file active, running in the background, surfacing uninvited, pulling attention back toward it until it is closed. This is called the Zygarnik effect. And it operates in human attraction with a precision that should make you stop and think. When a man is fully available, fully known, fully predictable, fully given, the loop closes. There is nothing left to return to. The mind files him away and moves on to the next open question. But when something is left unresolved, a conversation that ended at its peak rather than its exhaustion, a quality that was glimpsed but not fully explained, an impression that raised more questions than it answered, the mind cannot let it go. It keeps returning, keeps trying to complete the picture. Now add dopamine. Neuroscience has established that dopamine, the brain's anticipation and reward molecule, is not released most strongly by pleasure. It is released most strongly by unpredictability, by the variable reward. The slot machine does not compel people because it always pays out. It compels because sometimes it does, and you never know when. A man who is entirely consistent, entirely readable, entirely available removes the variable. He becomes a known quantity. And known quantities, however pleasant, do not produce the neurochemical pull of the uncertain. This is not an argument for cruelty or coldness. It is an observation about how minds actually work, stripped of the comfortable stories we tell ourselves about what people respond to. Machiavelli understood this without the neuroscience. He observed, across decades of watching powerful men rise and fall, that the prince who was always accessible was always underestimated. Familiarity, he understood, is the slow death of influence. Not because distance is inherently powerful, but because a man who is everywhere has, in a sense, made himself ordinary. And the ordinary does not occupy anyone's mind for long. Here is what does. There are 5 qualities that make a man impossible to stop thinking about. Not 5 techniques. Not 5 moves to execute in sequence. 5 qualities, things you build into who you are, not things you put on when it is convenient. The distinction matters. Because a woman who has spent any time observing men can tell the difference between a man who has depth and a man who is performing it. And the performance, when detected, produces the opposite of the intended effect. So, understand what these are before you decide whether you have them. The first is distinctness. The human mind is a pattern recognition machine. It notices what repeats and stops registering it. Walk past the same building every day and within a week you no longer see it. It has become background. Most men become background. Not because they are bad, because they are similar. Same references, same humor, same observations, same ambitions shaped by the same culture. Nothing about the encounter requires the mind to slow down, recalibrate, file something new. The man who is distinct, who has an unusual taste, an uncommon perspective, a point of view that was clearly formed by his own thinking rather than borrowed from the consensus, forces the mind to pay attention. He does not fit the existing categories. And what cannot be easily categorized cannot be easily dismissed. This is not eccentricity for its own sake. It is the natural result of a man who has actually lived inside his own mind. The second is controlled disclosure. He reveals himself in layers, not because he is withholding, because there is genuinely more. Each conversation opens a new room but never the whole house. She leaves knowing something real about him that she did not know before. And she leaves aware that there are rooms she has not yet seen. The man who gives everything in the first conversation has nothing left to offer the second. He has resolved his own mystery before she had a chance to become curious about it. The loop closes before it properly opened. Reveal something true. Keep something true in reserve. Not as strategy, as discipline. The third is genuine absence. He disappears because he has somewhere to be. Not to manufacture scarcity. Because there is a life, a mission, a set of obligations and ambitions that existed before she arrived and do not pause for her arrival. When he is gone, she knows or senses that he is not sitting somewhere waiting for her to notice. He is elsewhere, absorbed. This cannot be faked convincingly. A man with nothing pulling him away is unconvincing even when he tries to seem busy. The texture is wrong. She feels it without being able to name it. Build a life that genuinely demands your attention. The absence will take care of itself. The fourth is emotional precision. He does not flatter broadly. He observes specifically. There is a difference, and the difference is felt immediately between a man who says you are beautiful and a man who says something precise. Something that could only be said about her in that moment because he was actually paying attention. Precision signals observation. Observation signals genuine interest. Genuine interest, not performed interest. Not interest designed to get something, but actual curiosity about who she is rarer than most men realize. And rarity, as we have already established, occupies the mind. Say less. Mean it more. Notice what is actually there. The fifth is the unresolved question. He ends before she is ready for it to end. The conversation is at its peak, not its exhaustion. There is energy in the room, momentum in the exchange, and he closes it. Warmly, genuinely, without explanation. He does not squeeze every drop from the moment. She will think about that conversation. Not because it was long. Because it was not finished. Machiavelli wrote about the prince who always left something in reserve, who never fully revealed his position, never fully committed his forces, never let anyone believe they had the complete picture. The principle translates precisely. The man who always has a little more than he shows is always worth returning to. Now here is what you need to understand about all five of these. They are not independent variables. They compound. A man who is distinct but emotionally blunt leaves an impression of strangeness, not depth. A man who discloses in layers but has nothing genuinely interesting to disclose is eventually exposed as hollow. A man who practices genuine absence but has no presence when he returns has simply been absent. These qualities only work together. And they only work at all when they are the expression of something real. A man who is genuinely engaged in building himself, genuinely absorbed in something beyond the interaction, genuinely more than he has yet shown. That man does not need to think about remaining on anyone's mind. He already is. But here is the trap most men fall into when they first encounter these ideas. And it is a trap Machiavelli himself would have recognized immediately. Machiavelli watched princes destroy themselves in a very specific way. Not through weakness. Not through lack of intelligence. Through imitation without substance. They observed a powerful man, his bearing, his silences, his controlled distance, and they copied the surface. The posture without the conviction behind it. The restraint without the interior life that made the restraint natural. And they were seen through. Immediately. Completely. Often fatally. The same thing happens here. A man reads something like what you are hearing right now. He understands the principle intellectually. And he goes away and begins to perform it. He stops texting back quickly, not because he is absorbed in something, but because he has decided that delayed responses are strategic. He becomes vague and elusive, not because he has a rich interior life he is selectively revealing, but because he has been told that mystery is attractive. He ends conversations abruptly, not because he has somewhere to be, but because he has read that leaving early creates longing. And she feels it, not as a thought, not as a conscious analysis, as a texture. Something slightly off. Something that does not quite add up. The timing is deliberate in a way that feels deliberate. The distance is constructed in a way that feels constructed. The mystery has no actual substance behind it, and at some level she knows. Women have spent their entire lives reading people. It is not a skill they developed consciously, it is the result of navigating a world where accurately reading intention has always mattered enormously. The radar is calibrated. And what it detects in a man who is performing depth rather than possessing it is not mystery. It is emptiness with a costume on. Machiavelli was precise about this. He wrote that a prince must not only have good qualities, he must appear to have them. But he was writing for men who actually had them. The appearance was a layer over something real. It was not the substitute for the real thing. He understood that imitation without foundation is the most dangerous position of all, because it makes promises the man cannot keep. And when the promise is broken, when the performance cracks and the hollowness underneath become visible, the damage is not simply that she loses interest. The damage is that she loses respect. And a man who has lost someone's respect has lost something that very rarely returns. So what is the actual work? It is not tactical. It is not a set of behaviors to adopt or a script to follow. It is simpler than that and harder than that. You build something real. You find the thing you are genuinely building, the craft, the mission, the body of work, the standard of thinking, and you go to work on it with enough seriousness that it actually pulls you, actually demands your attention, actually gives you something worth revealing in layers, because there are genuine layers to reveal. You become, in other words, a man whose absence is felt because his presence meant something. Not because he engineered it to mean something, because it did. There is a word Machiavelli used that most translations render as virtue, but which means something far more precise. Virtue. It is not goodness. It is not morality. It is capability, the full development of your particular nature into something formidable. The lion and the fox, as he put it. Strength and intelligence, working together, expressed through a man who has actually done the work of becoming. That is what produces everything we have discussed in this video. Not the techniques, the virtue. And here is the uncomfortable truth about virtue that Machiavelli never softened. You cannot borrow it. You cannot perform it. You cannot acquire it in a weekend. You build it across years of directed effort, honest self-assessment, and the willingness to remain in the uncomfortable work of becoming better when it would be easier to stop. The man who has done that work, who carries it quietly, who does not announce it, who simply is it, does not wonder whether he is on her mind. He is too busy. Machiavelli believed that half of everything that happens to a man is outside his control. Not most of it, not a small fraction. He called it fortuna. And he was not being pessimistic. He was being precise. Because the man who believes he controls everything becomes rigid, unable to adapt when circumstances shift, unable to recognize when the conditions have changed, unable to accept that the world does not bend simply because his will is strong. Fortuna, he wrote, is like a river. When the weather is calm, men can take precautions, build embankments, redirect the flow, prepare for the flood. But when it rises, it sweeps away everything. Trees, buildings, the careful work of years. And the only difference between the man who survives and the man who does not is not how hard he tried to stop it. It is whether he built his embankments before the river rose. Apply this here. There is a portion of any human connection that is simply not yours to engineer. Timing. Her circumstances. What she is carrying from before you arrived. Whether the moment finds her open or closed. Whether Fortuna, in this particular season of her life, is calm or flooding. You do not control that. What you control is your embankment. The work you have done on yourself before the moment arrives. The depth you have built. The presence you carry. The virtue, that full, formidable development of your particular nature that you bring to the encounter. If you have built it, you are prepared for when Fortuna cooperates. If you have not, no amount of timing or circumstance will compensate. There is a practical application here that most men miss entirely. When you have said something real, when you have had a conversation that genuinely moved, that opened something, that left an impression you can feel even as you walk away, the instinct is to follow it. To text. To confirm it landed. To close the loop yourself because the uncertainty is uncomfortable. Do not. Return to your work. Your embankment. The thing you are building. The man who plants something genuine and then immediately digs it up to check if it is growing has not understood what planting means. You put the thing in the ground. You return to your work. What grows is not entirely in your hands. And the man who understands that, who can act with full conviction and then genuinely release the outcome, carries a quality that is rarer than almost anything else you could develop. Equanimity. Not indifference. Not detachment. Not performed coolness. Genuine equanimity. The settled quality of a man who knows who he is, knows what he is building, and does not require any particular outcome to remain intact. That quality, more than any technique in this video, is what she will feel. Not your strategy. Not your timing. Not the carefully calibrated gap between your messages. The fact that you are not afraid of losing her. Not because you do not care. Because you are not defined by whether she stays. Machiavelli understood this about power in every domain. The negotiator who needs the deal more than the other side has already lost leverage before a word is spoken. The prince who fears exile more than his enemies know cannot govern freely. The man who needs her validation more than he needs his own direction has handed over something he will spend a long time trying to recover. Fortuna, Machiavelli wrote, favors the bold. Not the reckless. Not the aggressive. The bold. The man who moves with conviction. Who acts from a settled interior rather than an anxious one. Who does not hedge and qualify and soften every gesture into something so careful it communicates nothing. Say the thing. Make the move. End the conversation when it is at its peak. Disappear into your work. Return when you have something worth returning with. And then release it. What follows is Fortuna's business. Yours is the embankment. Let us return to the two men. The first man is still there. Still available. Still texting back within seconds. Still rearranging his schedule. Still doing everything the conventional wisdom said would make him valuable. He is a good man. Genuinely good. And he is exhausted because he has been pouring himself into an interaction that does not pour back, and he does not understand why. What he does not yet know is that his generosity has become a kind of noise. Constant, predictable, unvarying noise. And the mind, as we have established, stops hearing noise very quickly. The second man is somewhere else right now. He is not thinking about her. He is not calculating his next move. He is not rereading the last conversation looking for signals. He is at his desk, or at his training, or deep in the work that was his before she existed and will be his after this chapter closes, whatever it holds. And she is thinking about him. Not because he planned it that way. Because he is actually there in himself, for himself, pointed at something that matters to him, and that quality of presence, that settled forward motion, left an impression she has not been able to fully resolve. The loop is open. Machiavelli spent the last years of his life in exile at Sant' Andrea in Percasina, stripped of his position, stripped of his influence, tortured by men he had served faithfully, watching the city he had given his best years to be governed by people he considered inferior. And every evening, he would change out of his farm clothes, put on his formal robes, the robes of a Florentine official, the man he had been, sit down at his desk and write. Not because anyone asked him to. Not because Florence was thinking about him. Not because the Medici had called and said, come back, we need you. Because the work was the work. Because the thinking was worth doing regardless of whether anyone received it. Because a man who has something real to offer does not stop offering it because the room has temporarily emptied. He wrote The Prince in that exile. 500 years later, we are still in the room. That is the whole answer. Not the techniques. Not the timing. Not the carefully constructed absence or the layered disclosure or the precise compliment landed at the right moment. Those things matter. We have established why they matter. But they are expressions of something deeper, and without that something deeper, they are costumes on an empty frame. The something deeper is this. A man who is genuinely absorbed in becoming, who has a direction, a standard, a body of work he is building across years, does not need to think about whether he occupies anyone's mind. He is too busy occupying his own. And that quality, that full, unhurried, unfrightened presence in his own life is the most compelling thing a human being can carry into a room. Machiavelli called it virtue. You can call it whatever you want. But you know what it looks like when you see it. You have seen men who have it and men who are pretending to have it, and you have never once confused the two. The only question worth asking at the end of this video is the same one Machiavelli asked himself every evening when he sat down in those robes in that empty farmhouse and picked up his pen. Not, is she thinking about me? But am I becoming someone worth thinking about? Go do that work. The rest will follow or it will not. Either way, you will have built something that belongs to you. And nothing fortune throws at you can take that away.